Patriots Nation? What's going on? Brian Phillips, your host here on Deep Down the Middle, episode 3, with my co-host Ryan Keiran. Ryan, how we doing this week, bud?
I'm not doing too well. Boy, this is a Patriots podcast, so we don't have to sit on it for too long. But long live Mookie Betts, my personal favorite athlete in Boston sports history. So this has been a really tough one for me.
Yeah,
not particularly happy.
Back-to-back tough weeks with Dante riding out into the sun, off into the sunset, Mookie getting traded, and watching a new team lift the Lombardi Trophy this week. Always a weird deal there. Guys, you know the format, deep down the middle here. We know the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle. We'll be taking a deep dive into one topic here in just a little bit, but we want to touch on a couple of NFL topics around the league and then touch a little bit on some Patriots news. Ryan, Super Bowl 54, Pat Mahomes is your MVP. Is there a case to be made that he should not have been the Super Bowl MVP?
I mean, there's a case to be made, of course. I don't think it's the right case to be made. Granted, he threw 2 interceptions. One was maybe the worst interception he's thrown in his career. One wasn't particularly on him at all. It was that second interception. It was just a combination of unfortunate events. It was a tough throw from a tough angle that Pat Mahomes had to make. It was to Tyreek Hill, who is not the best away from body catcher in the league. He's very good at a lot of things. That is not one of them. He had to throw it behind him because of the safety crashing down, ready to murder him in front of him. And the way that Tyreek tried to turn around and swipe at the ball ended up like scooping it back into the air so that the deep safety could come in and have time to make that diving interception. So it was really it wasn't anyone's fault, really. If that was like a Sammy Watkins, that's a catch probably, just because that's something that Sammy Watkins can do that Tyreek Hill doesn't really have. If it was a slightly better throw, it's extremely difficult for Pat Mahomes to make. It's also probably completed, but it's no one's real fault that it ends up interception. Sometimes things just happen. And then in the last 7.5 minutes of that game, Pat Mahomes did Pat Mahomes things. Pat Mahomes is the reason that play that, if you believe in momentum, turned the momentum of the game and won them, proceeded to win them the game. That was all Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is the reason that they won this game. Patrick Mahomes is why they are Super Bowl champions for the first time in 50 years. So Patrick Mahomes is the MVP.
Yeah, the naysayers out there will look at Damian Williams' 100-yard game, and which a large chunk comes on the final running, the touchdown for him. Yeah, a couple of touchdowns for him on the day. Nice.
Right,
because
half his scoring production and 40% of his rushing production came on that one play.
Right, because it wasn't Patrick Mahomes. I mean, literally, he has 2 turnovers, and it's like, oh, this isn't the Patrick Mahomes we're used to. Well, the game ended up coming out from an EPA per play perspective, came out in the top 3rd percentile of games that he's played. So it was a better than average Pat Mahomes performance from an EPA perspective when you look at the analytics of it. All right, moving on. A little bit of Patriots business. There were some shenanigans with Tom Brady during the Super Bowl and the days leading up. With some cryptic Instagram posting and whatnot. Don't want to get too deep into it, but Ryan, what does the Instagram post and all the Hulu stuff and the crazy Tom Brady rumors and the Nashville stuff, what does all this mean?
None of it means anything because no one knows what's going to happen until it happens. Basically, all of the reports that came out, and I'm going to hurt myself again, it was just like the Mookie Betts trade reports until he actually got traded, where every day it was basically like, look, the Dodgers are interested. The Padres are interested. Maybe something's going to happen. Maybe it's not. We don't know. Something's going to happen, though. But they just kept saying the same thing over and over and over. And that's pretty much what we're already getting to with Brady, where all we learned the past week is that he's not retiring. Already knew that. And the teams that were interested are, in fact, interested. That we thought were interested are, in fact, interested. The Raiders, the Chargers, the Patriots, etc. I'd say the only noteworthy news that comes out of this is just to be implied from betting odds that came out, where the Titans were plus 1,600 at like the 12th or 13th most likely team to sign him if he was to leave the Patriots. So that was the 31 other teams' odds. The Raiders were favorite. The Chargers were the second favorite. The Titans were like 14th. And those are the 3 teams that have been most linked so far. So it seems like the Titans aren't really players. And then the Patriots are still minus 250 to keep him, so they are still the overwhelming favorite. So we really haven't learned anything about this situation. It's just the same thing is being said in new ways, basically.
Okay. Um, all right, moving into our topic this week, moving things along here, guys. We wanted to bring you a little bit, just to talk a little bit about how the league is moving on in terms of how things are perceived in terms of balance. We hear it all the time. I've got a special little logo here that I've put up on the screen that just says balance. Everybody thinks balance is a 50-50 deal where, as long as you're keeping a run pass balance of 50-50, the defense doesn't know what's going on. This is how you need to operate. The assumption and what we're told all the time by color commentators and the broadcasters is, well, they need to achieve balance in order to be effective. And what we've seen now is that what we thought was balance isn't actually the case. Ryan, go a little deeper into this for us and tell me a little bit about quote unquote balance.
All right. So, I mean, like you said, everyone thinks that, you need to establish the run. You need to run to set up play action. You need to run to keep the defense from just sitting back in coverage or just pinning their ears back and getting after the quarterback. And none of that is true. What you need to do is move the ball effectively. And we're going to get to how this applies to the Super Bowl because the Super Bowl provides a great case of this. But when you are just managing a game, especially when you're managing a game with a late lead, what you need to do is continue to move the ball. You need to score points. It does not matter how you do that to score points. There is no history that suggests that in the current era that running the ball is the most efficient way to score points. And if you run the ball more, you are going to get more yards and score more points. I know you have some numbers ready to go, Brian, but so running is just a numbers game. That's all that running is. Tip at home. If you want to determine whether the offense should run the ball on any given play or not, regardless of situation, not regardless of situation, if it's 3rd and 15, you're not going to run the ball no matter what you see. But if you're in a relatively normal situation where running and passing is equally valid, look at the number of defenders that are in the box. Look at the number of offensive players that are in the box. The box being that from line of scrimmage, the people down on the line from one end to the other within like 5 to 7 yards on either side of the ball. That is the box. If the defending team has more players in that box than the offensive team, the offense has blockers in that box, you don't run the ball, you pass the ball. If they have the same amount, it probably goes either way. And if they have less, you should probably run the ball because that's all that running is. It's a numbers game. If you can get more than one person on your offense as a blocker on each defender, you're going to have success running the ball. If you have to try and block 8 people with 6 blockers, you are not going to have success running the ball. So running, people love to think that there's some great scheme, and Kyle Shanahan is great at run defending or designing runs, but at its core, running is just a numbers game, and passing is not just a numbers game, and that's why passing is more efficient, which I think you have the numbers to detail, Brian.
I do. And as it relates to the Patriots, okay, and the reason we brought the Chiefs up, and it's been talked about to death, and when Ryan and I are both passing game, we're very pro passing game. But when you look at neutral situations, okay, specifically, and the numbers I'll cite here, specifically in the first half, okay, outside of 2 minutes, so you take away that final 2 minutes of the half, and when the win percentage is between 20 and 80%, okay, these games are complete coin flips. These are neutral situations. You could probably include some third quarter numbers in there as well, but just to make sure you're getting the best, most consistent neutral sample size. These first half numbers are commonly used, okay? The Patriots were 5th in the league in 2019 in pass rate, right around, I believe it was 54%. 55% according to NFL Scrap R. But my numbers are a little skewed because I include the wild card game. But that was 5th in the league, okay, behind, hilariously, Chicago. And then you also had Miami was in 4th And then Green Bay, New Orleans were both right around 56, 57%. Kansas City was 73% in neutral first and second down, in neutral first and second down pass rate in neutral situations. That is absolutely absurd. And the reason they do it is because the best way to execute on third down is to not leave yourself third downs. It's really that simple. And Ryan, and just to talk a little bit about what you were talking about with box count, a lot of what the analytics are showing us now as well is that it's not so much the plus or minus, it's the correlation and the R squared and all the crazy math numbers. It's really just about how many defenders there are. Even if you only have 5 blockers, it's only about how many defenders are in the box. 8, obviously, not ideal. You're going to want to throw the football. 7, it doesn't matter if you have 6 blocking against 7 or 5 against 6. It's really just about that 6, 7, or 8 defenders in the box number. And the Patriots were actually a little more predictable this year in these situations. And I've got it broken down, and we'll go over it here in just a little bit. But in these situations where box count was, let's say the most standard situation was 7 guys in the box. Okay, three defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and usually a safety, or 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers. In those situations, and again, we're talking about these neutral situations, first half, first and second downs, win percentage between 20 and 80%. They were 51% run rate this year with a 41% success rate, which is poor.
And success rate, just to be clear, is your offense is keeping yourself on schedule to pick up a first down or touchdown if it's a goal situation. Now, so on first and 10, picking up 3 yards is not a success. Picking up 4 yards is
it all depends. So the success rate in this situation and
is EPA per play.
Exactly. Is it
but that,
gaining,
just to dumb it down a little bit.
Is it gaining points? So it's just like it's the same conversation we have all the time when people say, "Yeah, well, a lot of runs, a 1-yard run or on third and 2 is a lot worse than a 1-yard run in first and 10." Well, yes, and that's reflected. All of that is reflected in the EPA.
Right.
Success rate is going to tell you were you on track, just like you said, Ryan. Were you on track, and were you keeping the offense on schedule to score the next touchdown in the contest? And when the Patriots faced 7 guys in the box, it was typically because they were in their bigger personnel. So you have to imagine if you have 7 defenders in the box, it's because you invited them into the box. You had a fullback, you had a tight end, you had guys motioning in and playing H-back. We saw it from Edelman all year long, and even a little Mohamed Sanu. Guys coming in and literally squaring up in the tight end spot. Those are guys that I counted as in the box. When they draw a defensive back in, that guy is now in the box. When you just go down to 6 guys in the box, when they're not inviting these guys in and creating all this traffic, they only ran it 34% of the time. But the success rate went up by 6%. So that's obviously much better. And the success rate with 6-man boxes was just as good as it was throwing the football, which is the key to a good success rate, guys, is throwing the football as much as you possibly can. Throw the football. Now, every team would love to have a Pat Mahomes and a Tyreek Hill and a Travis Kelce and a Mitchell Schwartz at right tackle and guys like Robinson and Sammy Watkins running seams all day long. Now, that would be fantastic. And obviously a quarterback that can dish it like Pat Mahomes can. But the efficiency is there that you absolutely owe it to your offense to put them in the best position to do it. And a 50-50 split is just simply not doing that. Ryan, anything to add on this? And is there any middle ground here that we can reach, or are we both on the same side as far as balance is not what we once thought it was?
And so I think we're pretty much on the same side, and I do want to shift towards how this impacts like managing late game leads and the Super Bowl in a second too. But yes. I just want to preface too. I grew up playing football. I was a running back. I love running the ball. I think running the ball is the most aesthetically pleasing form of football. There's nothing better in football than seeing like a Ravens where they just line up and they maul everyone, and you see gaps, and you know that running back is not going to even be touched for 7 yards at least, and then maybe he makes something happen, and the defense and the other team's fans just have to watch and wait until someone gets close enough to even touch them. I think that is so much fun, and I absolutely love it. I love it. There's nothing better.
I agree.
And this is where people start to get mad at like the analytics nerds. Is they think that they want running the ball to be completely out of the game. That's not what they're saying. They need efficiency in the game. So no one is going to tell the 2019 Baltimore Ravens not to run the ball whenever the hell they want, because they were gashing people.
Right.
When you are running like the Baltimore Ravens, like you were running like the San Francisco 49ers were for a lot of the year, and we'll get there in a second.
Or in the NFC Championship game.
Right. You run whenever you want, because that is just as effective as passing the ball when you are that successful. However, you are not always that successful, and it's so much easier to have a defense just decide to stop the run than to just decide to stop the pass. Again, because it becomes a numbers game. If the defense is going to devote 8 men in the box, you need to start passing the ball. If the defense is going to devote 7 men in the box, you need to have – that's where some sort of balance comes in, so that they cannot just key off, because those are the crucial plays where talent starts to win out a little bit versus just numbers. But when you have 8 in the box, it doesn't matter what the situation is. It does, unless you are just literally running the ball one time where you're like taking a knee almost just to get the clock done and the game's over. So again, in those 20 to 80% win probabilities where the game is still in the balance, if there's 8 in the box, you need to pass every single time. So that takes me into managing late game leads. People fundamentally misunderstand how to bleed clock. Bleeding clock is not running the ball. Bleeding clock is picking up first downs. Bleeding clock is maintaining possession of the ball. It does not matter how you do that. If you are in 2nd and 7 and you pick up a first down throwing the ball and he goes out of bounds and stops the clock, you still get 3 more downs to keep the clock running. If you run there and now you have 3rd and 8, and you are probably punting, you're killing 1:20 off the clock. Versus now you've killed 2+ minutes and then more if you can get another first down by throwing for that first down.
I think it's also important to mention I think it's really important to mention the mindset of what you're doing as well, as opposed to playing scared. And how many times do we see teams run the ball 3 times, try to get the other team to use their timeouts, they kick the ball back to them, and they lose. And when if you got that one first down, you're good to go. For instance, Tennessee Titans, wild card game in New England. 3rd down and 5, I believe it was. Anthony Ferkser on the fade. Essentially, you seal the football game right there. It's over. Yep. The Patriots don't get to stop. But if you run the ball and you run into an 8-man box and you get stuffed, you're punting. Next thing you know, Tom Brady's got a lot of time to work with. All right, real quick. But let me just ask you this then, Ryan. While we're on the topic of the Super Bowl, is Kyle Shanahan a choker?
No, and this is so. Thank you for teeing me up for this. Let's take it. So everyone complains about him abandoning the run in the 4th quarter. There, I tried to quickly find some numbers, and I couldn't. We just behind the show notes. We were a little bit scrambled this week, and I tried to find some quick numbers, and I couldn't. So I apologize for not having them, but the running game was not working in the second half for the Titans, or for the 49ers, and especially in the 4th quarter. There were a couple plays that I can vividly think of where they tried to run outside zone, and Raheem Mostert was just running along the sideline, and he ended up picking up like a yard, and that was like talent from the running back to pick up a yard. But let's focus on one specific play on the drive where the 49ers were leading 20-17. It's 2nd and 5. This play has been talked about on Twitter all week. So I'm not saying anything new here. Credit to Mina Kimes. Credit to Steven Ruiz, because they've been talking about this a lot. But I fully agree with them. It is 2nd and 5. There are 8 men in the box. The Chiefs have 8 men in the box. Kyle Shanahan decides not to run the ball. He gets George Kittle on Terrell Suggs, 39-year-old pass rushing Terrell Suggs. He gets the best tight end in football on Terrell Suggs, and he throws the ball, and George Kittle gets open.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Garoppolo sees him open, and Jimmy Garoppolo throws it to him. Chris Jones, the second best defensive tackle in football, bar none, bar only Aaron Donald, the second best defensive tackle in football, makes an incredible play, which he did all of the fourth quarter, and bats the ball, and it ends up incomplete.
Yeah,
and then they're in third down.
Right, and so now this is where the quality of your quarterback and why the quarterbacks are the most important position in sports, because you need the guy to be able to make the plays. And yes, it's a team sport. Yes, it's all 11 guys making things happen. You cannot call passively. You cannot play call passively. And Kyle Shanahan has shown in the Super Bowl against the Patriots and now in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, both colossal losses, yes. One is an offensive coordinator, one is a head coach, that he is willing to put his faith in his quarterback and put his faith in his offense. And he has been let down. And instead of passively running the football and putting the game out of his best player's hands, he decides he's going to be aggressive and he's going to play stay aggressive and go win the game as opposed to hoping you don't lose it. And we saw him get let down by Devontae Freeman not blocking Dante Hightower on the strip sack of Matt Ryan. We saw Chris Long force the holding call on Jake Matthews, in 2018 or 2017, and we saw Chris Jones make a great play. Sometimes that's just how it works.
We also saw him again get George Kittle open and Jimmy Garoppolo miss him. We saw him get Emmanuel Sanders open downfield for a dagger touchdown and Jimmy Garoppolo miss him.
I mean, it's the play that you dream about as a pro, as a
right. Super Bowl on the line. It's third and long. Emmanuel, your wide receiver gets open. You're dropping back. There's pressure all around you, and you drop a dime, and he scores the touchdown, and you just won the Super Bowl. Except he missed it by 5 yards. And last thing that I want to say on this, people don't acknowledge enough that almost every single football game is a coin flip. Anything, and in fact, statistically, any game that finishes within one score is literally a coin flip. That is, those games, almost every team except for the Patriots and the Peyton Manning Colts. Those are the only two teams in recent history that have bucked this trend. In close score games over a long enough period of time, your record is 500. In 1 year, you might be able to go 8-3 in those close games, but the next year you almost always regress. We saw it this year with the Bears. Last year it was the Raiders, or last year it was the Cowboys. The year before that it was the Raiders. Every year this happens where we see a team, they win a lot of close games. We're like, oh, they're a team on the rise. Watch out for them next year, and then they regress back because that is just a coin flip. And this year they don't get as many good coin flips.
Yep.
And in an individual game, this shows up even more. What Kyle Shanahan did is he had two piles that he could pick from. One pile, he had the 75% chance, an open George Kittle to ice the game, an open Emmanuel Sanders to score a decisive touchdown. He was picking from the 75% bucket, and he just happened to get the 25% results.
Yeah, it happens, and it's happened twice now.
It's happened twice in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and you get a label, even though you're in the offensive coordinator of one of the teams,
right?
Which is wild.
So I will even say last thing. If you're going to compare the two, it is a lot more defensible this time than against the Patriots. Only because they were already in field goal range if they run 3 times off the clock and they're taking that decisive 10-point lead.
True.
But again, you're not leaving it in the hands of a kicker. You're leaving it in the hands of the MVP that year.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's still defensible on his part, but that one warrants criticism, and he acknowledges criticism for that. This one is not the same thing where he was trying to get too cute. This was the smart play. This was like the 75% of the time you make this play, it works out for you. And It happened to be the 25% of the time that it didn't, and that hit like 3 times in the biggest moments.
That's
football. It happens sometimes.
Yeah. Last thing we're gonna leave you guys with, in terms of box count and aggressiveness on early downs in these neutral situations. Okay, 8-man boxes this year on these neutral situations. 40 snaps. Patriots ran the ball 64% of the time, with a success rate of 42%. They threw it 23 times. So 37% of the time. Against 8-man boxes, they threw it. Not enough. Success rate of 57%. Now, what's baked into there? Probably a lot of play action. But that's a topic for another show. Ryan.
I was gonna say there's a lot of topics that spin off this that we'll get
Yes.
to at later dates, like play action not being set up by the run and
Exactly.
running out of seemingly obvious pass formations and running out of shotgun at the goal line. This is all stuff that we can get to down the line, but
Absolutely.
these are all things that kind of feed into this.
Guys, each week we wanted to take the last couple minutes of the show and go over a draft prospect or an under the radar free agent signing or acquisition or some kind of transaction. Ryan, who is your guy this week?
All right, this week I'm looking at a young-ish wide receiver in Rashard Higgins. Spent a few years on the Browns. He was undrafted out of CS Pueblo, I want to say, some Colorado school. He had a really good rookie year. He kind of got buried on the depth chart. He got injured last year and the year before. He got buried behind Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, Antonio Callaway the year before this. He's not an elite athlete. I think he ran like a 4.65 40. And he comes with the early injury history. He's not a super athlete. He doesn't have a ton of production. And because of all this, his contract shouldn't be particularly expensive. You can probably get him, again, this has been my theme so far, Ryan Anderson, Carl Joseph, now Rashard Higgins. All these guys are talented players that have shown some level of success in the NFL that should not be particularly expensive, that fills out that middle of your roster where if you move on from it, it doesn't kill you, but you might be finding something there. And here's why I like him. He is a clean route runner. Clean route runner. Where we have like the Mohamed Sanus and the N'Keal Harrys where they kind of win with their size and physicality. Rashard Higgins is 6'1". Again, he runs like a 4.6, so he's not a burner, but he is such a clean route runner that he can separate from man coverage. He can beat press, he can separate at the top of his stems, and he can get open. And that is what the Patriots need more of, are just guys who can get open on their own. As if he slides into that Philip Dorsett role, I still want Philip Dorsett back. I love Philip Dorsett. But if he slides into that role, he can do similar things. And maybe it seems like Brady kind of lost favor with Dorsett towards the end of the year. Maybe he gets on a better page with Brady. And if they decide that Mohamed Sanu is a sunk cost, they want to free that $6.5 million to go pay Tom Brady, to go get Austin Hooper, they can slide him into that Sanu role for probably a third of the price, maybe half the price. And it's another low risk, moderate reward type signing that I would be all over.
I could get down with that. And Higgins is a guy that we've heard a lot of chatter on in years past. Okay.
It is, and there is a chance there that he might, since so many teams are probably going to be interested in a young receiver with a history of success, his contract might get a little absurd at that point. Pass. We're talking in a situation where you can get him at a deal that he's worth. Bless you.
All right, so I was going to bring up an old familiar face here, but I'm going to switch gears. Although I do think that bringing back Adrian Claiborne would be a nice little move for the Patriots this year, especially with guys like Kyle Van Noy leaving. But he does play that hand in the dirt, third down pass rusher position that we're seeing Chase Winovich take over, as well as John Simon. So a guy that is going to be on the free agent market, defensive tackle, if we don't get don't see the return of a Danny Shelton, is Jordan Phillips, guy who's been all over the AFC East. Yeah, he's been I'm a fan of his. PFF doesn't love him. I don't know. I've got to take a closer look at him. It's probably because of his run fits. But 6'6", 330-pounder. Can two gap. I know he can two gap, and he's actually got more pass rush chops than just about anybody his size going, at least in the conference, or at least in the division. They've seen a ton of him. He's all over their tape, and he'll be out there at a manageable cost, probably a couple $1 million a year, probably somewhere in that range. He's got 5 years under his belt, and like I said, he can get after the pass rusher a little bit and get you some of that early down pass rush from the big guys on the interior, like we've seen a little bit from Lawrence Guy. And we saw a little bit from Adam Butler this year as he made a little bit of that transition to that strong defensive end, kind of 5-tech, 4-eye role. So Jordan Phillips would be a guy I would like to see I'd like to see them bring in on a manageable deal for an under the radar signing. Okay, Ryan, that's going to do it for us this week, man. Episode 3 of Deep Down the Middle. Anything else to add?
No, let's get out of here. Sorry, one thing. I'm on board with Jordan Phillips. I have a feeling he might get paid a little bit more than you're projecting there.
Yeah, we'll see.
Marcel Louis Jacques, probably best Bills reporter going. Follow him on Twitter. He seems to think that Phillips is going to get a nice deal and that the Bills aren't going to really have a chance of bringing him back. So
I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets priced out a little bit, but we'll see what happens. I would definitely be on board at a lower price.
It's a hefty interior defensive line market out there, especially with guys like Michael Pierce and Shelby Harris and all those guys out there. But you can even go a tier down. A guy like they saw like Austin Johnson, or like an Austin Johnson would be a lower under the radar guy. Like a Zach Kerr, guys like that are out there too. So for that lower tier. But all right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in for episode 3 of Deep Down the Middle. Sorry, I was a little delayed this week. We had some stuff going on, but make sure you guys are following us on Twitter. Follow Ryan at Ryan_Keiran. That's EI. And follow me on there as well, at bphillips_SB. Make sure you guys are going to patspulpit.com all week long or all off-season long, for that matter, for your Patriots off-season coverage. And we will be back at you guys next week with another episode of Deep Down the Middle. All right, so go Pats.